soon. And I was also doing my internship. So with depression setting in, my internship was not something that I would say I completed successfully. And I had the kind of job, I was a field supervisor at the time for a team of people for the census. They were doing like early canvassing, so it was pretty flexible. And I managed to somewhat complete my internship. And that's how I was getting through the year. And this was maybe about, and I also actually got a trip to Vermont, which was pretty cool. It was decent. It gave me a break that I needed from everything. But to be honest, I spent almost my entire time, if I wasn't working, on the phone with my partner, with my kids. Yeah, on the phone with my kids, sorry. So I let that pass. Eventually, I got to a point where I'm like, damn, me and my partner, we were, doing what we do. And there was an accident on a day that I knew I was ovulating. And I was panicking. I remember asking him, I'm like, oh my God, I really don't want to take a plan B. He told me, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But I knew what that meant. There was never a time where we had an accident and I didn't come out pregnant because we had so few accidents. I'm going to let that sit for a minute. We're going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to keep on. Okay, so we're back. Where did I leave off? Right, so accidents. They were far and few in between, if that's how you say that saying. I'm pretty sure it's not, but whatever. We rarely had any accidents, and this time I was like, oh my God, I'm not sure that I can handle this, but I was still mourning the loss of a child. So I'm like, you know what, maybe this wouldn't be the worst thing. Maybe let's just see how this ends up for us. 2 weeks go by and I am waiting for, Mother Nature to show up and do her thing. And disappointingly, I get my period. And I'm like, what does this mean? I thought I would be pregnant. It wasn't. And I was just like, okay, wow. I guess I dodged that bullet. But then 2 months later, we have another accident. And they're becoming more frequent now. And I'm not. They're during times of the month where I should have been pregnant, and I was not. So I was starting to wonder, did losing that kid did it ruin my ability to have more children? About 8 months go by, and sure enough, nothing. At this point, I was being absolutely reckless. So I just gave up on the hope of having another baby. And I thought that maybe I was just like, you know what? This is it. I'm happy with my girls. My daughter got over, her 1 year mark. I was like, okay, that's great. Wonderful. But I was disappointed on the inside because I felt like I was conflicted. How was I supposed to make up for this child that I lost if I couldn't have another one? How was I supposed to? I couldn't live knowing that a child of mine was gone and there was nothing that I could do about it. And it seems kind of messed up because it seems then like, oh, well, I want to replace this child. That wasn't it. I wanted my baby back and I didn't care how. So insert pandemic here. The start of the pandemic was horrific. And I didn't see my partner for like a month, so he could quarantine and he wouldn't infect us. Kid you not. I don't know if we were doing it too often or what, but Soon as he comes back, ovulation day, boom. We do the do, and I'm just like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter. But I still gave him the warning. I still gave him the preface like, hey, I'm in that zone. I could get pregnant right now. He didn't care. And that's something that I've always, I guess, admired about him, because that to me was the sign of like a committed and stable relationship, that I sit there and I tell you, hey, if you're not on your A game, we're going to end up pregnant. And he was kind of just always like, okay, what's that supposed to mean to me? Are you telling me that you don't want to be? And I was just like, no, I just want to let you know. I just want to do my due diligence and letting you know that if I come out pregnant, you fully know that this is what's about to happen. So we did what we did. And then not long after that, maybe a week and a half after that, we head down to our house in Maryland. It is family fun in the sun, Memorial Day, opening up the pool, getting new furniture. We're down there for like 2 weeks. He was down there for 1. And I started to feel really funny. Like I was falling asleep every opportunity I got. The day before I'm supposed to come home, I got this weird feeling and I was like, no, something's not right. I tested, but it tested negative because I hadn't missed my period yet. But I knew something was wrong with my children, with all my pregnancies. My very first telltale symptom was that I could not stay awake. I would sleep like a sloth. Getting behind the wheel was absolutely dangerous in my state. I would sleep for the first 3 months and I was exhausted. And then dealing with kids was further exhausting. So I tested, it was negative, and I was like, I'm losing my touch. I could usually tell. I go home, back to New York. As soon as I get there, I realize I've missed my period. I go ahead and I test, and sure enough, it's positive. Now, for months, I'd been bitching and whining about how I didn't understand how I wasn't getting pregnant. Now that I was pregnant, I was in absolute denial. There was no getting over it. There was no telling me. There was no talking about it. And I remember my cousin was living with me at the time, and I was like, bitch, I don't want to talk about this. I just don't. I don't even want to talk about the possibility. I didn't even tell him right away, tell my partner right away, because I was so afraid of what the conversation would be, considering what our last experience was with pregnancy. So I kept it to myself. And the next day, he comes home and I'm like, hi, and he's asking me like the telltale question, like, hey, what time of the month is it? And I'm like, oh, Lord. I'm like, listen, I'm pregnant. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss it. I don't want to dwell on it. Nothing. At all. So he's like, I didn't think we needed to talk about it. I'm like, okay. And I just left it that way. For weeks, I didn't want to talk about it. But we were both working together in the same place now. He had gotten a job at the census office with me. And I had escalated to manager. So even though everybody was home for the pandemic, I was doing active work from home. They were actually paying the other employees to stay home, and they were paying them like they were there, but they didn't have to go to work for a while, maybe for like a good grip of weeks, couple of weeks. And then they had to transition to unemployment. And then with the pandemic boost, that was decent. So I don't believe he was scheduled to go back to work. Actually, when we came back from Maryland, we came back because he was scheduled to go back into work. And I was scheduled to also go back into the office. Now, at the time, I was on a rotational shift where managers would switch in and out of the office because somebody had to be there at all times. So I was still going to work. Now I find out I'm pregnant, and absolutely nobody in our workplace knew we were together at this point. So we're going back in, or he doesn't go back in immediately. He's still collecting unemployment for a while. And I go in, And now I'm like, crap, I kind of don't want to tell anybody. I'm still in my denial stage, you know? I didn't want everybody to be concerned because we're in the middle of a pandemic and now I'm a liability because I'm, old people, pregnant people, immunocompromised people were more susceptible to the virus, we all thought. I mean, that's what was going on. So I kept it under wraps for a while. And then I experienced the most severe morning sickness I had ever experienced. And that was my first clue that I might have been pregnant with a boy, because I didn't have morning sickness at all with my children. And I was so much more tired. And I was this massive, aggressive bitch. I was super hardcore aggressive. You could not tell me nothing without me getting in your face. And it started early. It started really early. So I was very concerned about what was going on with my pregnancy. I even had to get some of those like little Preggy Pops things to just get through a day. Then we go for a walk to the pharmacy. This was maybe 2 months in. We go for a walk to the pharmacy, and when I get back, I crouch down on the floor to play with our girls. I felt a release of blood. And as soon as I get up, I feel it. It's everywhere. And I go to the bathroom and I'm having these cramping pains and I am just blood everywhere. And I instantly thinking, oh my God, I miscarried. Now at the time, I know I had a complication with Jamila's pregnancy. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is the same thing. And I was terrified of, I'm losing this baby. I didn't know what to do. I was still in that stage of my pregnancy where I didn't really know how to tell that I was still pregnant because I hadn't even received an ultrasound yet. And I think my appointment was like 2 days from them. And because of the pandemic, you had to go alone. Dad wasn't allowed. No support system was allowed. You're going through this by yourself. I confirmed that the pregnancy is still okay, and it turns out that I had this massive subchorionic hemorrhage in there. Like, it was humongous. I wasn't allowed to do exercise. I wasn't allowed to have sex. I wasn't allowed to pick up any of my children. I wasn't allowed to do anything vigorous that would have strained this. Throughout the course of my pregnancy, I had like 2 more bleed outs, one of which was at work. I felt like I needed to pee. I got up and thank you, Jesus, that I was wearing black pants that day because I was gushing blood down to my boots. It was horrible. And I instantly raced to the bathroom and I texted my friend Amy and I'm like, I need you to come here and I need you to help me now. And I think this really is what solidified our friendship because I kid you not, it was like a murder scene in that bathroom and I'm washing my pants in the sink, my pants and my underwear in the sink. I'm only wearing a blouse. I took off my boots. She's sitting there guarding the door to make sure that nobody comes in and I'm washing my clothes in the sink because now I know what this is. I know that this is just the hemorrhage releasing blood. So I'm like washing in the sink and trying to dry using the hand dryer. Completely took the whole thing out of commission for like 45 minutes. After my pants were dry, after my underwear was dry, I went ahead and put everything back on and I went back to work. I go back into the office. My pregnancy with Daxius was overwhelming because, all of the statistics with Corona. I had to be at training sites every day that we had them. I think there was one where we had them for like 14 days straight or 12 days straight. And I was on my feet and we're cycling through these classes that are 2 hours a piece. I'm giving my spiel. Hi, my name is Angel. I'm your manager. Feel free to contact me. All of the buffoonery that goes on with the United States Census on top of in the middle of a pandemic. It was absolute chaos. I cannot wait to do it again in 10 years. Actually 8 now, but you get my point. So as time goes on, my belly's growing. I'm still holding down a really good job because the census paid extremely well. And I was in a good place throughout most of my pregnancy because I was working with my partner.